Well, last night in Canton, Big Ben would not have been playing. The Cowboys starters wouldn't have been playing. Mike Tomlin would have been coaching his fourth stringers against Mike McCarthy, the new Cowboys coach. If there had been a Hall of Fame game, that's the first tangible thing that we have seen fall victim to the pandemic as it relates to NFL games. No Hall of Fame game. But the Hall of Fame ceremony, also not happening this weekend, reminded us of, combined with a couple of other things I saw on Twitter this week, there was a question of whether Patrick Mahomes would get in the Hall of Fame if he retired right now, which I think is just kind of kooky. He's played 31 regular season games. But we kicked around this idea, if the world were to end today, and we understand that if the world ended today, the Hall of Fame would be gone with it. But in the event that football just stopped, that it was over, that it was done today, but the Hall of Fame still existed, which current players would make it into Canton? Now, we're leaving out the no-brainers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Adrian Peterson, Larry Fitzgerald, the guys who have been around for more than a decade, that already have the credentials, that if they walked away right now or if the world ended right now, they would get in. We're going to focus this one, Charean, on guys with 10 years or less. And you're a Hall of Fame voter, so what you say here has a hell of a lot more credibility than what I say. So let's start with the guys that we think are the no-brainer, no-doubter Hall of Famers with 10 or fewer years of experience in the NFL if football ended for good today.
Well, I actually did 9 years or less, so this being
Nine's fine.
Year,
Nine's fine. 9 or less is fine.
Okay. You know, and I actually came up with the more guys than I thought I would come up with, and I'm going to start though with Aaron Donald. We didn't mention him in the guy that has the potential to break the sack record, and here's a guy who had 20 and a half sacks and led the league 2 years ago. I mean, he is the best. To me, he's the best player in the NFL. Now, you're going to say, well, it's Patrick Mahomes. He's a quarterback. I realize that. I realize Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback and has more, perhaps, impact on the game. But I think Aaron Donald, for what he does for as long as he's done it, which is only 6 years, has been phenomenal. One of the best players in NFL history. He's won a couple of Defensive Player of the Year awards. He already has 72 sacks in his career. He's been to the Pro Bowl every year, 5 All-Pros. I mean, I don't know what else you want from a player. Aaron Donald's done more in 6 years than a lot of players do in 10, 15, 20 years in the league. I just think he's been phenomenal. So I'd start right there, and then there's a ton more of pass rushers who I think are right there with him, with Khalil Mack and J.J. Watt and Von Miller. I think, to me, all are first ballot Hall of Famers with what they've done in their careers so far.
I agree with you on J.J. Watt without question. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. That puts him in regardless of any other accolades. Von Miller's an interesting one. I mean, he's got a ton of sacks. I think he gets in if he goes. It's almost that Terrell Davis, Gale Sayers career, right? Where you've got the Super Bowl trophy, you've got the Super Bowl MVP if you're Von Miller. Did you play long enough? Is 9 years enough? And I think for J.J. Watt and for Von Miller, it is. And I agree with you. For Aaron Donald, 6 years is more than enough given the skill that he's displayed and what he's achieved as an interior defensive lineman. Getting 20 and a half sacks as a guy rushing from the inside is almost unheard of. So Watt, I would agree. Watt and who's the other guy? Von Miller. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about your
Von Miller
Aggie
and
friend,
Aaron
Von
Donald.
Miller.
Yeah.
But what about Khalil Mack? You mentioned him. He's another one that arrived in 2014 rather. Has he done enough in his limited time to get in the way that Aaron Donald will get in?
You know, he was a kind of almost an afterthought that I moved off the up for discussion list onto this list simply because he's had 5 Pro Bowls. He's had 3 all-pro things, and he was all-decade. And we'll, we can get into an all-decade debate. It used to be automatic that when you made the all-decade team that you automatically got into the Hall of Fame. But there was a first team and a second team until this year. And this year we've all gone to clumping them together. So there's multiple players at every position. So I'm not sure that's going to happen. There's a bunch of guys on that list that I would not say are Hall of Famers who made the all-decade team for the 2010s. But I do think that Khalil Mack, with his all-decade, he was Defensive Player of the Year 1 year. I think he's done enough that you would say, all right, I'm going to get in. Now, maybe he's not that first ballot guy, but I do think he's done enough to get into the Hall of Fame.
We haven't mentioned quarterbacks. Quarterbacks with 9 or fewer seasons. Russell Wilson would be at the top of the list of guys who get in. He was drafted in the 3rd round in 2012, 2 Super Bowl appearances. He's never had an MVP vote, and we mention that from time to time. And I don't think it's as shocking as it would appear because it's 1 vote per voter. It's 50 voters per year. There isn't first place, second place, third place. I think judge circumstances. He's had his best seasons when there is a clear-cut no-brainer who gets all or almost all of the votes. But he's clearly a first-ballot Hall of Famer, Charean, if he never takes another snap in the NFL, either by choice or because the world has ended.
Absolutely. I had him on my list. He's played 8 years, 6 Pro Bowls, and has the Super Bowl and led his team to a couple Super Bowls and been one of the outstanding quarterbacks while he's in his time in the league. And, when you talk about not getting a vote for MVP, Drew Brees has never been – he's going to make the Hall of Fame first ballot. He's never been first team All-Pro. He's never won an MVP award. Now, he's gotten MVP votes, and he finished second at least one time, I know, to LaDainian Tomlinson. But he's going to enter the Hall of Fame without those credentials, too. And it just so happens that other players have had better years in the years that they've had their best seasons. But Russell Wilson, to me, no doubt, is a first ballot.
What about other quarterbacks, Charean, that have 9 or fewer? We lost Charean. Charean is gone. Maybe the world is in the process of ending. It started in Dallas, and it's working its way up here. That's not funny at all. We'll get Charean back. I'm trying to think of other quarterbacks that have that 9 or fewer years of experience. We're going to talk about Patrick Mahomes. With two seasons of starting experience, I just don't think that's enough. Cam Newton's a guy who was an NFL MVP. Has he done enough to get in? I think you can make a better case for Cam Newton just because he's played a heck of a lot longer. Charean is back. Charean, I was concerned the world was ending and the epicenter was Dallas.
Yes,
I'm glad that you're
exactly.
back. We've moved on to other quarterbacks. Cam Newton is the next one I want to talk about because I don't think he's the same no-brainer that Russell Wilson is, although he's won an MVP award and Russell Wilson hasn't even gotten a vote.
Well, I had Cam Newton as my long shot to make it. I think he needs to play more years. I think he needs to do more in the league than what he's done so far. I mean, everybody makes the Pro Bowl every year, right, Mike? Even at the quarterback position. I mean, look at Andy Dalton and some of the things he's done because so many guys pull out because it doesn't include the Super Bowl teams. He's made 3 Pro Bowls in his career, so I don't think he's done enough at this point. I think he needs to have some success in New England and have some success over multiple years before we talk about Cam Newton as a Hall of Famer.
So what other quarterbacks? That's the thing. The dominant quarterbacks in the NFL are either really old and no-brainers or so young that you can't make a Lamar Jackson, 1 season of starting, he's not getting to the Hall of Fame. Patrick Mahomes, I'm sorry, anyone who thinks Patrick Mahomes will get in the Hall of Fame if he stops playing today. 2 seasons is not getting you into the Hall of Fame. He's on track to be one of the best ever, but you can't just walk off or have the world end after 2 seasons and expect to get in. Is there any other quarterback that stands out to you that, Andrew Luck, I mean, if he'd have played last year, but even then, would he have done enough? He hasn't done enough in his career. Yeah. So if we lost Charean again, Charean's going to get I'm not going to joke about the world ending anymore until I have proof that it's not. We'll get Charean back. And we'll see how during the break she reacts to technical difficulties. We know how our friend Chris Sims reacts to technical difficulties. I have a feeling Charean probably slightly more controlled and calm than Christopher David Sims, who Charean is back. Charean, hopefully there was no profanity from you during the technical difficulty. But, there really isn't, back to the quarterbacks, Andrew Luck, like I said, I mean, I don't know that he'd be a candidate. He's already retired. We've got Matt Ryan and we've got Phillip Rivers who are on the other side of 10 years. Let's go ahead and expand the window just for them because they're really not no-brainers right now.
Right.
If they're done right now, do either or both get in?
Well, I think I would put Matt Ryan in that long shot category, and I would put Phillip Rivers in that up for debate category. And I know he's going to finish, with all kinds of, top 10s in all the legitimate categories that we judge. But, not getting to a Super Bowl, not getting to that many playoffs, not making an all-decade team. There's just some things there I think that are missing from Phillip Rivers' career that he has a chance to make right now to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And having said all that, Dan Fouts got into the Hall of Fame from the Chargers, and Phillip Rivers is going to end up having a better career than what Dan Fouts did. And so I think he's probably going to go in. I just don't think he's a no-brainer. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about him, as there will be for Eli Manning, frankly. And both of those guys are going to be really difficult decisions to make. I think he does get in at some point, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as probably he would like or his team would like, unless he can go on and lead the Colts to some big things this year or next year or plays a few more years.
Rivers and Eli both from that class of 2004. Ben Roethlisberger, a name we haven't mentioned. In my mind, he's a no-brainer. I mean, we need to mention him.
Agreed.
I think he's in no matter what, right? Okay.
Agreed.
I didn't want to leave him out.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave him out one way or the other, but I think he's in. It's a given. He should have been mentioned along with Breeze and Brady and Larry Fitzgerald. All right, speaking of Larry Fitzgerald, let's slide to receivers now. Julio Jones would be the first one that comes to mind for me, especially because he started in 2011. He's got the 9 years. He gets in under the 10-year limit. Has he done enough to get in? He's 25th all-time in receiving yards. He doesn't have a whole lot of touchdowns, especially in the red zone. Does he get in? Does he have to wait? Or does he get in at all, Charean?
No, I think he gets in. I had him on my list of if the world ended today, he would go in, the 12,000 yards. And he's got 7 Pro Bowls. He was on the all-decade team to me, which is big. That means he was one of the best receivers of the past decade, something that A.J. Green, which I'm sure we're going to talk about him in a second, didn't get on, which I think is big for him when you start talking about Hall of Fame. We are going to look at that, all the receivers that got on there, and he wasn't one of them that got on there. So I think Julio Jones is a lock to get in. You look what he did in the Super Bowl, too. If you want some signature moments, he has those in the Super Bowl, and I think it was sort of like Terrell Owens the year that Philadelphia went to the Super Bowl. If the Eagles had won that, I think that he would have been MVP, and I think you would have had a legitimate case in the Super Bowl if they had won that Julio Jones was the MVP of the Super Bowl, as many big plays as he made in that game. So I think he has everything. He checks off every box that you want a Hall of Fame player to check off.
He made that catch when the Falcons were up 28-20 with about 5 minutes left in the game or thereabouts. That, to me, I thought was the dagger. It was a sideline catch. Remember that? Kind of on the sideline. Yeah, great catch. Absolutely. And I think you're right. If they win that game, he's got as good a chance of anyone on that roster. I think it would have been down to him and Matt Ryan to be the MVP, and Julio Jones very well may have been the MVP. I think he's definitely – well, I don't know that I want to say definitely because it's so competitive at receiver. There's so many guys who have racked up stats to be 25th all-time in receiving yards. I don't know that it's definite. I think he's in after a wait, like we've seen with so many other great receivers. A.J. Green's number 67 on the all-time yardage list with 8,900 yards, and he just gets overlooked and forgotten. And I think part of that is playing in Cincinnati. I think he's going to have a hard time getting in if he's done as of right now.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. I think he's got to do more in his career, and not playing last year probably hurt him a little bit too. But yeah, he's got to do more. I think he's up for debate. 8 years, he's got 7 Pro Bowls, and the no all-decade thing, again, to me was big. He wasn't one of the 4 best receivers of the last decade, which I think says a lot when you start judging these things. And it's hard to judge stats anymore, passing stats, especially for receivers, because they throw the ball so much more than they did even 10 or 15 years ago. And so he's got to do more. He needs to probably have some playoff success. I can't even think of a signature catch. We always talk about signature catches. When we get in the room, you talk about what was his signature play. I don't have an A.J. Green signature play simply because they haven't done anything in the playoffs since he's been in Cincinnati.
A guy who technically has been around for 10 years but only played 1 game last year, Antonio Brown, a guy who very well, as far as his NFL career is concerned, may be done. The hay may be in the barn. He's got 11,263 receiving yards. He was on a Super Bowl team as a rookie, never won a championship, was for several years, post-Calvin Johnson, the best receiver in the NFL. What are his chances of getting in, and how much does the turmoil that he created over the past 18 months affect him?
To me, it's T.O. all over again, right? I mean, you're not supposed to talk about what doesn't happen between the lines. And I think that's exactly what we're going to be discussing. How divisive was he on the teams he played on? All his, you're not supposed to consider off-field stuff, but I think you do in his case, at least in the back of your mind with what went on with him not being able to play last year. I mean, that was significant, and that did factor in because of his off-the-field stuff. He didn't get to play almost a full season. He played one game with the Patriots, so he missed 15 games last year. So you do think about those things, but he has all the yards that you want. He has 4 All-Pros. He has 7 Pro Bowls, 9 Pro Bowls, whatever he has. I mean, he's done it. He's put up the yards. He's made some signature catches. He's done a lot of good things that you want him to do, but there's just a bigger discussion there with what he's meant to his team and what he's done on the field in a leadership role and helping his team get to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. And so I think he's a huge discussion. He did make the all-decade team, which I think weighs in his favor. But to me, it's a lot like the T.O. discussion.
Well, and, we have to factor in the human dynamics of what goes on in the room. You are in that room every year. Who's going to stand up and make the case for Antonio Brown to get in? Is Ed Bouchette still the Steelers representative?
He is.
Is it still him? Yeah.
I think he is.
There's been some venom between Antonio Brown and Ed Bouchette, right? You need somebody who's going to make a passionate case for you to get in, and I don't know that Ed Bouchette's going to be all that motivated to do so, and I can't say I blame him recalling some of the things that Antonio Brown wrongly accused Ed Bouchette of before he, talked and tweeted his way out of Pittsburgh. So if you don't have an advocate in the room, you're not getting in. And I think that's a factor for Antonio Brown that could make it hard for him to get in as well. At a minimum, he's going to have to wait several years. Even then, he may not get in. He may have to come back and play several more years at a high level to try to cement his case and maybe do it with a team that would have a representative at the Hall of Fame meeting that would stand up and stand on the table to get Antonio Brown in. I got to ask you about some Cowboys, specifically Jason Witten. No longer a Cowboy. But and he's out of the window, but tight ends, there aren't a ton of tight ends in the Hall of Fame. He's up there statistically. I assume he gets in, Charean, and I assume that you're not the most objective voice to ask about that since you'd be presenting him.
Yeah, right. Well, I probably will present Jason Witten, and I do think he deserves to get in. Yeah, I don't think we've treated tight ends, favorably over the years, but it is getting more with Tony Gonzalez, and I would expect Antonio Gates to go in eventually. And I think Travis Kelce is one guy that we can mention here is up for debate with what he's done so far in his career with 7 years. He's certainly on track to go into the Hall of Fame. But when you look at Jason Witten, I think he's done a lot of great things. I think, again, it goes back. He does have a signature play. We all remember the play against Philadelphia when his helmet came off and he continued to run and got downfield. And I think that kind of defined what Jason Witten is and was all about, and he's come back from retirement and did okay last season. The touchdown numbers are concerning. There's no question about that, and he'll be better off if he can go to I almost said Oakland, but if he can go to Las Vegas and have a good season this year and maybe get a few more touchdowns, I think that will help his case even more. I'm not sure he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I hope he is. I'm not positive he is a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I do think he goes in. It took Michael Irvin 3 years, and it might take Jason Witten 3 years as well.
There are plenty of other positions we didn't get to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a cork in this bottle, hope the world doesn't end today, and then some point next week we'll address linebackers, corners, safeties, offensive line, and maybe even specialists as well. When we return, though, speaking of the Cowboys, speaking of pass catchers, who is the number 2 receiver this year for Dallas? There are multiple candidates to be the number 2 receiver. We're going to have some fun with that next here on PFT Live.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.